Hey everyone, and welcome to Lobster Life session 2. I'm Patrick from marketing team, and I will keep this brief as the last time. For those who are here first time, Lobster Life is our monthly series where our technical success managers share practical platform techniques and tips, 20 minutes demo, and then we'll do Q&A. Quick housekeeping, drop your question in the chat as we go. We will try to go through all of them at the end. If not, same as last time, we'll send some responses in a couple of days via email. So all the questions will be responded to. Please ask in English ideally. And if you need to leave early or you cannot stay till the end, we will send the recording to everyone who registered. So also, you don't need to take any screenshots. Everything will be shared with you. Today's topic is API Manager, and Niklas is one of our technical success managers with a hands-on experience in API connectivity. He's going to show you how to set up the API Manager, when to use it, and how it's different from profiles. So, Niklas, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Patrick. Oh, hopefully soon my screen will be available. There we go. So let's take a look at the REST API Manager. So first up, let's take a look at the capabilities of the API Manager that we have, which are maybe you're familiar with or not. So let's take a look right now. So first up, of course, we have authorization. You can authorize using OR2 or JSON Web Token, as you probably used to from profiles as well. We also have role-based access, so you can define and manage who has access to which endpoint within your API. We also now have policies as well, so you can define request limits, and you can even define them for specific user access only if you want to do that. Then after that, we also have endpoint deprecation. So what that means is you can deprecate an endpoint for a specific date, and the users that are still accessing this deprecated endpoint will get a warning that the endpoint will soon not be available anymore. And then they can change to the maybe new endpoint that you have available. We also have documentation. You're probably already familiar with the Swagger documentation from profiles. We have the same one here in the API Manager as well. Then we have resources. You can, of course, access all your resources directly. So all your orchestration entities and also databases or files that you have on the system, you can access using the API Manager. And we also have file streaming. So you can send even bigger files, for example, like, I don't know, images or PDF files directly. And you can also force the download of these files if you feel like that. And we have an automatic checking mechanism in our new API Manager as well. So you can check for mandatory fields or also check some correctness checks. We will take a look at that in the demonstration in just a second. So the big question maybe for most of you is, why should I use the API Manager and not use a profile instead, right? So let's take a look at that real quick. And right here, you can see the API Manager compared to a profile uses a lot less logging, which obviously leads to a faster execution time. And as you can imagine, that will lead to a lot quicker responses from your API. So in a comparison I did for the same task, the API Manager was twice as fast as a profile was, faced with, as you can see, the same task. So I think that's one of the main reasons why you should use it, right? Should stick out to everyone, I would say. So now we have seen the capabilities. We've seen a reason or a big reason why you should use it. And of course, now let's take a look at how to use the API Manager in our demonstration right here. I've just set up a little use case. My use case is we have an event going on and people are supposed to register for this event using an API. I know it's not really a real business case, but let's pretend that's what is happening. And these requests are then written into a database by this API. And the user, of course, gets a little feedback that it has been written to the database. And as you can see, I want to have two different requests right here. I have a post, which will just register the company with some company data, and it will also abort the request if an entry already exists in the database. And then I have a get registration, which you can use to, well, get a specific company, see if it already registered in the database, or also get all the registrations in the database currently. And of course, this request, the GET request should only be available to the admins. So not every user can access this API, and we'll take a look how to do that as well. So let me first show you the structure that I want to use in my case. So this is how the request structure should look like, or the post, to be more specific. As you can see, we have 5 fields. We have the customer number, which I'm going to use as this registration key. So using that number, I can identify the customer and differentiate and see if it's already in database or not. And the rest is pretty basic. It's just some string fields, name, street, city, and zip code. And last but not least, we also have country, which I want to be a 2-letter ISO country code. So yeah, and I also want to have it check that this country code is also valid, but I'm going to show you how to do that as well. And for the customer number, I want to be sure that it's 5 digits long and not longer and not less than that. Okay, so let's get to it. I already opened my REST API in my Lobster system right here. You can find it under the menu point integration. And I've already set up the base URI, which is v1, so version 1/event right here. You can see right here the URL is already concatenated right here, so I can see how it will technically look like, how I'm gonna access my API at the current moment. And before I go into a definition of the method, actually, I'm first gonna go into our little tab over here called private structures. In the private structures, I can, create a structure. So the incoming structure I can define right here. And using that structure, the Lobster can do all the correctness checks basically when I call the API. So let's create a little structure right here. I'm going to call this one registration. There we are. And now I can define the fields of this structure. So as you saw in my little example, we have the customer number. First up, this one is of type int, so it's always a number, it's an integer. And as I mentioned before, I want this to be only 5 digits long. So in order to validate this, I can add, a validator to this field. So I will use a so-called rule validator right here. And I can also give a message if that validation failed for some reason. So the user entered a wrong number. I've prepared something. There we are. I will just let the user know that the customer number has to be 5 digits long. And now I will actually do the rule. Let's take a look. I will add a so-called entity property rule. So I will check the incoming number, the customer number. So that would be the input object, which is, this number that is coming in is of type integer. And then I will define that it has to be, it has to be greater than 9,999. So it has to be longer than 4 digits, obviously. And I will just copy this rule right here. And it also has to be obviously less than 100,000, right? So it has to be lower or has to be less than 6 digits long, right? And using this rule, I should be able to verify that the customer number is actually 5 digits long. Right. Okay, I can close this part right here. So this field is already set up, and the other fields are a lot easier, of course. I just have the name, which is just a string, so I won't add any special rules to these other fields for now. And I don't think I will do that later. So let me just add all these fields right now. City is also a string, shouldn't take a long time. Then we have the zip code, which is also of type string because there are countries which use letters in the zip code. Therefore, I define it like that. And last but not least, we have country, where I said I want to check if it's a valid 2-letter country code. And instead of using a validator to do all of this, what I can do instead is use the type country, which is already a predefined enumeration in the Lobster. And this enumeration in the Lobster already contains all the 2-letter codes of all the countries, in the world, basically. And the Lobster can then use that enumeration or that list of values to compare the incoming value if it's already existent in that list. And only if it is, then this is a valid country code. Otherwise, obviously, it is not. And it will also give back the user the feedback if he gives a bad country code, of course. We will take a look at that, of course, in just a second when I try out the request. But of course, before I can try out the request, I have to actually make the request, of course. So my structure is done for now. I'm very happy with this one. Yeah, that should be it. So let's change back to the API tab right over here and add an actual method right now. So the method I want to use, I said, is going to be the post. There we go. I can add a URI right here. I will call this one registration. And you can see it will put together the URI like this. We can see this is our base URI. And here we have the URI of this specific method I have defined right here. So now the question is, what is the input type? Now you think, okay, I will just enter registration. But as you can see, I cannot find registration, even though I have just defined it. That is because I have to use something called a client object, right? Because a private structure is a client object for the Lobster. And in order to use it, I have to select client object right over here. And in here, I now have the drop-down list of all the predefined client objects. As you can see on the bottom, I can see the private registration object right here. There's also a possibility to define client objects globally in the whole Lobster system. This is the one, for example, you see up here. Or I can define it, as you can see, as a private structure just for this REST API right here. And then it's also only available for this REST API right at the current moment. So I will select, there we go. As you can see, here we see the whole structure that I've defined just a few minutes ago. And we can also see that now the Lobster, or this API to be more specific, is now working in the context of this registration object right here. So what that means is I have access to all the fields within my client object structure, within this registration structure, so I can access all the fields. What that means exactly, I will show you right now, because first up, what I want to do is check if the entry is already inside the database, right? Before I do anything else. So what I can do is I can just execute an SQL query right here. I can store the result because, of course, I want to access this result data to check, does it already exist? So is the result empty, which would mean that the entry does not exist in the database. And if there is something inside the result, well, that means the entry obviously already exists in the database. So I will just give this a name. For example, SQL result, I will just call it. What that is doing in the Lobster is we will define a variable called SQL result and will write, well, the result of this SQL query into this variable right now. You can also see that if you open up here in the declared variables, you can see on the very bottom, we now see the SQL result variable being defined already, or declared to be more precise. So I will just use the HSQL alias. I know I wasn't very creative on this one, but yeah, this one is available, so why not? And I've prepared the SQL query already, but I will show you, of course, right now. As you can see, it's just a basic select statement from a database, and I've just the condition that the customer number I'm looking for is, well, equals to this parameter. You're probably familiar with this writing from the Lobster data functions or the integration profile functions, right? The one stands for basically the first parameter, and the I is for the type of value I have. So in my case, it's an I, which stands for integer. And now I just have to define this parameter down here. I will add a new so-called variable, give it a name, and I will call it 1 because, well, it has to correspond to the name up here, right? Since I call it 1 over here, I have to call it 1 on the bottom right down here. And now I just have to give it an actual value, and this one is supposed to be the customer number. And as you can see, I can access the properties of my object using the so-called object property. And here we have customer number. So you can see it already selected customer number for me. And you can also see all the other fields that are technically available in this object property right over here. Right. So now this should work. It should select the customer according to its customer number. And now all I have to do is do a little if then else check and check this variable, which I've defined, the SQL result, and basically use an entity property rule out here and see if the SQL result variable that I've selected is empty, like that. So if I will just zoom out a little bit because I think we need more space. There we go. If the SQL result variable is empty, obviously that means we have to make an insert into the database to register our customer. So let's start with that using, of course, execute SQL query once again. This time I don't need to store the result, so I will just leave this one empty. The alias is the same as before, h SQL, and I have prepared the SQL insert statement right away, but I think everyone is familiar how to write an SQL insert statement, right? So I don't need to explain this. And now I have 6 parameters, which I'm just gonna add real quick and give it a name, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and assign the values according to the fields. So the first one is gonna be the customer number. The second one is gonna be the name, and so on and so on. This is all pretty much the same. So I am always using the object property here, and I just have to make sure I don't make a mistake right now, because otherwise the order will be screwed up. So give me some seconds to concentrate, but I think I'm almost done. I just need the country and we are good to go. There we are. All finished. There we go. Right. So if that SQL query has been done, we can give the user the feedback that everything went well and the customer is now registered in the database. So how do I give the feedback to the user? I use the so-called response variable that you can see right over here. It's already declared. I just need to assign this variable a value, which will be the response of this API call. So in order to do that, I use setValue. And on the left side, I use this response variable. On the right side, I'm just going to use a simple concat. So I'm just going to give back a string, and I will say customer, and we're going to say the customer number as well, has successfully been registered. There we go. So this is the success message. And now you might be like, well, I also want to change the response code maybe to a 201. So the user gets the feedback that it has been created as well. And of course, I can do that using the response code variable. Pretty similar. I use a set value again. I use, when I can find it, response code, and I set it to any value I want, in this case, 201. So this one is defined. All I have to define now is the response if the user or if the customer is already registered. I do that over here. So this is the else case pretty much of my if statement. And here I can just say that I set the response to the following string: customer has already been registered. I made a little mistake. There we go. And I am finished for now with this one, right? I saved. And as soon as I save, this should be available and ready to get. So I'll go to my little Bruno over here. By the way, little fun fact, I used to have a dog called Bruno, but well, rest in peace. He's not with us anymore. And yeah, as you can see, I've prepared everything. There we go. And let's send the request. And as you can see, I get the feedback. The customer has been successfully registered. Great. Let's take a look at the SQL. As you can see, it's inside the SQL database as well. Great. And as you can see, if I send this request again, I already have registered this customer. So I get the message, he has already been registered. And I can also show you the checks. So for example, I add a number, so it's like a 6-digit number now, and we can see that I get an invalid content. Customer now has to be 5 digits long. Great, so that's working as well. Or if I leave something out, which is a mandatory field, I will see that I'm missing a mandatory value. Or if I enter a country code like this, which does not exist, I also get the values not of type country, wrong type, and it will show me the valid values that I should be able to enter in this moment, right? And by the way, if I have multiple things wrong, he will show me all of them at once, right? So you see the customer number is wrong and the mandatory value is missing and the country code is wrong as well. How great is that, right? I don't need to define anything. Everything is pretty much done for me most of the time. Okay, let's quickly do the other request for the get. And let's go back right here to my API manager. So in this one, I'm just going to use the get method, and I'm just going to use a parameter right here. I'm just going to call customer number. And the Lobster will automatically register this parameter as a variable. So if I go to declare variables, we can see that the customer number exists right here. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a little if then else statement, because what I have in my head is if the user enters a 0 as a customer number, I want to show him all the customers currently registered. And if he enters a specific number, I will give him back that specific customer. So I need to check that condition with my entity property rule. I'm gonna get the variable customer number, check if it is 0. And if it is 0, then I'm gonna set a little variable that I'm gonna define. I'm gonna call SQL query. There we are. And the value is just gonna be a simple string, which is gonna be my SQL query, like that. Select all from customer registration. And in the case that it's not 0, then I want it to be almost the same, except the string changes, because then I need the where condition in there as well. So it has to look like this one, where customer number equals this. And now I can just execute the SQL query as I did before. And of course, I could be like, okay, now I'm going to store the result in the response variable later, but I can also just access the response variable right here, right now. So I can just do response. So we'll store this SQL result in the response variable, give it an alias, and the query I already saved in my variable, which is called SQL query. There we go, done. And I can try it out. Over here, I've prepared this for the 0, for example. And we see I get all the customers. Well, there's only one. Or if I access a specific number, I get, well, that didn't really work out so well. Okay, I don't know, I did something wrong, so let's just pretend that didn't happen, because I don't want to waste time on this, but it did work before. I just made a little mistake somewhere around here. I forgot the variable. See, there we go. So if I add my little variable right here, then we can do it, and I can actually show you that it does work if I do it right. There we go. And now the only thing I need to solve is that only the super users have access to this API. And all I need to do is use this assign right here. And I can say, I'm going to assign this to the role super user. There we go. Save it. And now only super users can access this, which means this should still work. There you go. I can still access this because here I'm using the access of a super user. But in this post registration right here, I'm using the access of a non-super user. So if I just get a new token right now and I send this request, sorry, wrong method. There we go. You can see that I get forbidden. You're not allowed to access this resource. So I've obviously, well, done what I wanted to do. So let's go back over here and to my last slide, because, well, just a little homage to my old dog, Bruno. And I'm done with my demonstration for now.
Great. Thank you, Niklas. We have a lot of questions. Let me, for now, take the screen out.
Yes,
And
of
let's
course.
go to the questions. You can vote on the questions, so then we will start from those who has most votes. First one, I will add it also here. Will it be possible to predefine the private structure by, let's say, a JSON schema, XSD, and such alike?
Well, sadly, currently that, as far as I'm informed, is not possible. Yeah, there is an XML structure lying behind this. Maybe if you share my screen, I can show you real quick. So as you can see, you could definitely edit this as an XML structure, but as you can see, it's not, I think, what you would expect it to look like. But technically, if you rebuild this structure, you could technically predefine it and load it in here, but it's not really an XSD structure or anything like that. It, yeah, looks like this. but you can technically rebuild it if you feel like that. Yes.
Great. Next question, I'll also add it. If you use SQL query in the API, would it be nice to have an alias dropdown available similar to the SQL function in the profile? Sometimes there are many connections and you have to open the database connector menu in the order to copy the title. I guess this is more a request than the question.
Yeah, I guess it's more a request. I think it would be nice too. So I agree with this request. Yes, I would like that as well. But as far as I'm informed, it's currently not available.
Yeah. We have a client that do not use Lobster Cloud, but do have endpoints API running on the DMZ server where Lobster is installed and working through Lobster that way. Will this functionality be applicable for those cases as well, or only Lobster Cloud APIs?
So as long as the customer, of course, has this version of Lobster, which has the API manager included, and also currently uses API connections that are working, then you can definitely use this one as well. So if it's currently working, then we'll definitely work with the API manager too. Yes.
Great. Does the API manager also supports SOAP and GraphQL?
I'm not sure about the GraphQL. For SOAP, I'm also not sure. I actually have to admit, I don't know. Maybe one of my colleagues knows and can answer, or I will send the answer of this one back in the later document. Yes.
Yeah. Next question. Is it possible to make external call from the API, example to your ERP?
Yes, of course, you can also make API calls within this API structure as well. I maybe just share my screen 1 second. It's really quick. It's not that complicated, yeah. Because in here, you also have an actor called HTTP. And using that, you can also, as you can see, just make an HTTP request. Or by the way, I didn't show this, but you can, of course, also call profiles if you feel like that, right? So it's not one way or another, but you can combine both options, of course, as well, if you feel like that. Yes.
Great. Can you show, please, how to set up rate limiting for Get API?
Of course, let me just show you. It's right here in the advanced settings. I didn't show it because of some time limits. But basically right here, you can set up the so-called policies. And I will just set up a global one for everyone. And for example, I say 2 requests in a time frame of 10,000 milliseconds or 10 seconds. Apply this, save it. And now if I access my get, I will send, I just need a new token, 1 second. There we go. There we go. 1, 2, and the third one, as you can see, will be rejected because there are too many requests. If I wait my 10 seconds now, I should be able to make the request once again. And as I mentioned, you can also make this specific to a channel, for example. So you only limit the rate of a specific customer or something like that. Would work as well. And as you can see, 10 seconds are over and I can access again.
Okay. Next question. Are features like throttling, pagination already implemented?
I honestly can't answer this because I don't know. Yeah. I mean, this is the API you do yourself. So I don't know. Pagination is something you have to implement yourself. So if you implement it, you have it. If you don't, then you don't. I mean, yeah. And I'm not sure what's mentioned with throttling. Is that the limiting? Because you just saw it's implemented. I don't know what else I have to understand with throttling. So I'm not really sure. Maybe you can be more specific on that question.
Is there a way to migrate the profiles to API Manager?
No, not that I would know. But you can set up the API Manager and call your profiles, but that would just slow down the process. So it's not really the effective way to do. So sadly, you have to set up everything new.
What is the reason that this API Manager works so much different as we are used to profile mapping?
And that is because the API Manager uses pretty much the components of what usually we call the orchestration components. So yeah, this is why it's using different components. It looks very different because it's more designed in the orchestration environment. Yeah, and therefore it has different functions. It works differently. But by the way, you can technically also use your data functions that you're used to right over here. So as you can see here, we have all the 400 data functions that you're already used to. You can still use them right over here if you want to do that. So you don't have to use the, well, let's call them orchestration functions if you don't want to.
Great. How can we manage authentication for this API? I expect, is it possible to assign using existing channels?
Yes, correct. Let me just go to the channels because I have, of course, predefined some channels before doing all of this. Yeah, just ignore all the crap over here, but I had to set it up here. So I have two channels defined, and let's take a look at the customer channel right here. So the customer channel is the one accessing this post request right over here. And all you need to set up basically is the same you did before. So you either use JSON Web Token or you don't. And you get the authentication forward from right here with the client ID and the client secret. And the only difference is that you need to set up the so-called additional IDs. So you pretty much give the Lobster what user is authenticating. So this is the parameter sys pro user right here. So you say customer in my case, because in my database, I can show you right now, the user is called customer. There we go. This is the one. And then the role as well. It has the role customer registration user. So I put that one as the so-called role ID. So I take the ID of that role and put it right here. By the way, in the future version, this is already the beta version. It's not available live at the moment, but you can just press assign identity, and then you can just select from a list of users and from a list of roles as well. So it will be much easier in the future as well. And you just press apply to put it all in. Yeah. But yeah, it's just a channel HTTP as you're probably used to from before.
Great. Is it possible to customize the failure response structure?
Well, of course it's possible. You can give anything as a failure bag that you want, or unless you're talking about let me just fix my request 1 second. Yeah, like that. Of course, if you, sorry, yeah, I killed this pretty much. 1 second. There we go. If you're talking about this structure right here, there's no way to access this as far as I'm informed. No, this one is default. But if, for example, you want to, of course, change the structure, if the, I don't know what I'm doing right now. Something's going very wrong. Okay, I made another mistake. Well, sorry, I wasn't apparently prepared for this. But yeah, you cannot really change what is coming back here if you get a 422. No, there's no way to edit this at the moment.
Yep. Does the API manager also create jobs in a classic way so it will be visible for monitoring?
No, it does not, because it's not a profile. Therefore, no jobs are created, which is the advantage of the API manager. Because it doesn't do this, it doesn't create logs, and therefore it runs faster. That's basically how it is. If you feel like, well, I would like to have a log and see what is happening, what you can do is use a function. Let me just put it right here. And it's, I have to think, control center, that's how it's called. The log into control center, you can give it also a name, get request registration. There we are. And if I do the get request again, it will be logged right into the so-called orchestration logs, and here. And you can see there's my request now. I can see it. It's not as great as the integration logging, maybe, but you can also see the event data, well, which is pretty empty because it's a GET request, but it would be a POST request. You could also see the real JSON coming in as well, and you can see the log messages. I would argue, yes, it's not much better than what we have in the integration right now, but it still works. And you can also set up the display columns if you want, of course. That works as well, right? So you can put this in here. For example, I could put the requested customer number in the column number 1. Let me just do the request real quick. Once again, there we are. And then I should be able to see this right here. And as you can see now, I can see the customer number being requested in my display column number 1. Yes. So, but I just have to, yeah, of course, be aware that this of course, creates logging and therefore creates a delay in the response, of course, of a few milliseconds.
Great. Next question. Can you please show me how to debug in case of error firewall is not letting handling the call over?
Well, if the firewall is the problem, I mean, I can also show you the debugging inside the Lobster. I mean, if the firewall is the problem, it's not really a Lobster problem, I would argue. So it's really hard to show you because, well, I can't reproduce that problem. But if you want to debug inside here, you can use the so-called test mode and just check if a specific, let me see if I can, it's hard to show, but basically I can use something called not the debugger, I forgot the name. Oh, too many things to remember. Yes, 1 second. I will find it. I can't believe I forgot how it's called. The event recorder, there we are. You can use the event recorder. And if I send the request again, hopefully it works, let's see. Yeah, it didn't work because I didn't filter. I have to filter it to the customer. And now let's try again. Send. Oh no, this was the GET request. This is my customer actually. Okay. Yeah, it's hard to show, but basically you can set it up here so you have a testing set, and then you can test it with that input value and see if it works or not, basically. But like if the firewall is the issue, I don't really think I can help you in here in the Lobster, because then you have to fix your firewall basically. Right?
Is it possible to automatically generate an API description and make it visible to customers?
Well, it's possible, of course, to have in documentation right here. Maybe I was a bit fast. So right here, just press show open API documentation. And I don't know why now I'm getting so many errors. When I tried everything, it worked, of course. This is just amazing. Let me just save. Okay, I don't know what's happening.
Friday.
It's it's the firewall. I don't know. When I just tried, I would say 1 hour ago, it worked. And of course, now it doesn't. But it's basically the Swagger documentation you're hopefully familiar with from the profiles. And you can send the link to that documentation to your customer, right? So it's available to the customer. It's publicly available. And then you can just test it out over there. Maybe if I go to this request, no, nothing. I don't know. I tried it on the way here. I don't know how, but apparently I did something wrong. Okay.
We can also check that after. Maybe one more question and then we wrap up. And the rest of the question we can answer via email. That should be a short one. Could we introduce other domains than the platform Lobster endpoint, example, API, acme.com, customers, etc.?
Well, if you have to, I don't know, I would say probably yes. I didn't try yet. But if it was possible with the profiles, I'm very sure it's possible right here. But it's, I'm not really too sure in that topic. It's not really something I do every day. So I probably have to look it up afterwards, but I would just say for now, I think it's very much possible, yes.
Yeah, we can double check after and add it also to the information we'll send after this webinar. So Niklas, thanks a lot going for the question and showing us the demo. As we said, we'll share the recording later today. You can also fill in the survey, give us a feedback. And in case we will see you on the next session, end of August 28th. And you can already also sign up. So thanks everyone and have a nice weekend. Ciao.